Hello everybody, it's Final Rich here. I'm going to make my Smiths vinyl collection video. The Smiths, they didn't really fit into the pop music scene at the time. They had a very human sound, and it didn't quite fit into the synthetic synth pop sound that was really popular at the time. Um, and Not only the guitar, it was a guitar, a normal rock lineup of guitar, bass, and drums that wasn't really the in thing at the time. Morrissey sang about things that I personally could relate to. I mean, he just sang about normal emotions, awkwardness, shyness, loneliness. How can someone be lonely in a city of millions? And I don't know. I'm more of a music guy than I am a lyric a lyrics guy, but his lyrics. I mean, I related to a lot of his songs. I mean, some of the songs I didn't know what the heck he's talking about, but I mean, he just had his emotion. I don't know. It just kind of moved you. Now I know a lot of people don't like the Smiths. It's with a lot of people. I mean, you got some extreme. You have people that love them. You got people that hate them. And I can understand that. I mean, Morrissey isn't the most masculine guy in the world. And I honestly can understand why people would dismiss him without even really listening to the albums. I'm sure everybody's heard songs, singles of theirs, and decided from that that's not for me. But I totally understand dismissing a band or a musician just by the appearances or your preconceived ideas. I mean, I've done it. There's loads of heavy metal bands that I claim I don't like, but I really haven't listened to their albums. It's just you look at the record and you got these guys with this stupid macho stance, and it's just, to me, it's like a cartoon. It's a joke, and I'll be quite honest. I haven't given a lot of the music a chance. I dismissed it before even listening to the albums. I mean, I've heard songs by some bands, but anyways, the Smiths. Well, let's go to the Beatles. A lot of people, especially younger people, they don't realize the impact that the Beatles had on music. They had more impact on music than any band before and since on popular music. Now, some people are going to argue, oh, Elvis. Elvis didn't have the impact that the Beatles had. And there really hasn't been a single band that's had that impact since. But musically, there's a couple of bands that I think kind of started to reach that point where musically they were in the same ballpark of the Beatles. And when the Beatles broke up, the Beatles, in my mind, I mean, they had a very positive impact on the music world, but they also had a negative impact, especially in the 70s. There were bands that, quite frankly, they were just taking themselves too serious, and they were trying to be the next Beatles, and it wasn't happening. I mean, I could name names, but there's no need to go there. Now, people are going to laugh at me for saying this, but the band that I thought had the potential to musically reach a similar vein as the Beatles was Madness. Their first albums were, ska, One Step Beyond. It was a, basic ska, just like the early Beatles albums were basic rock and roll, but their take on it. And as time developed, Madness really wrote some really good songs. They, I mean, musically and lyrically, they were a good band, and they weren't trying to be the next Beatles. I mean, and they weren't the next Beatles, obviously. I mean, in the UK, I guess they were quite a bit more popular than they were here. But I think, and I did see the Madness in concert, and their vocals didn't quite match up to the Beatles in concert. That's putting it kindly. But I think the Smiths, they also got close to becoming, to, I don't know how to explain it, to reach that point where everything's just gelling. The lyrics, the music, and their impact on the music. I mean, they had more of an impact in England than they did here. I mean, quite frankly, a lot of people, when they, especially people that weren't around in the 80s, when they look back at the 80s and they what they think is 80s music, a lot of it really wasn't selling that big in the US, quite frankly. But anyways, let's get started. I do have a page of notes here, because I did actually look all my albums up on Discogs. I've heard people talk about Discogs before, but I've never actually used it. And I was thinking of doing a video either of Black Flag or Red Cross, because I do have quite a few unique albums of theirs that eventually I will show. But the first vinyl collection that I really showed was the Cramps, and I wanted to show something that was completely different. I don't want people to pigeonhole me and think, I only listen to a certain type of music. I mean, I've had comments on my videos or when I've commented on other people's videos, they'll tell me, well, this band, yeah, it's good, but it's a little more new wavy than what you normally show. I have a lot of new wave albums or records, 12 inches. All the videos that I've done so far have been current, recent finds. And I'm not buying a lot of new wave. I pretty much already have everything that I want. So, but, I do like new wave. I do like a lot of bands that people might be really surprised, Village People, for one. But anyways, let's get started. So I did look up Discogs, and the first album, it's just entitled The Smiths. Now, one thing about the Smiths, visually, their albums were definitely unique too. And Morrissey gets the credit for that. He designed their album covers. This album was released in March 19th, 1984. And this is a first edition, first pressing. It's on Rough Trade Sire, so this would be the first U.S. pressing. And it comes with this sleeve and the lyrics on the other side. Now, the Smiths, they only came out with 4 studio albums. I mean, they had a pretty brief career. During their tenure, they came out with 4 studio albums, 3 compilations, and 1 live. So they had 8 albums, all in all. Now, the second album they released is Hateful of Hollow. Hatful of Hollow. I always call it Hateful of Hollow, but it's Hatful of Hollow. This came out in November 12th of the same year, 1984. And this is a import, UK, and this is also a first edition. And it's a gatefold, really nice. Let's see if I can get that really cool picture of the band. And the members there. And the sleeve on this one simply has the lyrics. Now their second studio album. Now that I haven't been talking about the music at all, have I? Let's back up here a little. We're going back to this one real quick. This album has some classic songs on it. It's got This Charming Man. I just dig that song. The lyrics. Still Ill. Hand in Glove. But it's got What Difference Does It Make? Which is, I think, not only one of the best Smith songs, it's one of the greatest songs of the 80s. I just love that song. No More Apologies. The music is kind of that jangly guitar sound. And some of the songs, though, they're playing a groove, and Morrissey's singing over the groove, and nothing really changes it, and that's how the song is all the way through. So this isn't all great songs. There's no what I would call bad songs on it, but there are some songs that are much better than others. Now, the second album, this was all B-sides and BBC recordings. And side one of this album is just fantastic. It's got William, It Was Really Nothing, What Difference Does It Make, These Things Take Time, This Charming Man, How Soon Is Now, Handsome Devil, Hand in Glove, and Still Ill. So it's got BBC recordings of probably the best songs off of their first album. Plus it has the B-side, How Soon Is Now, which is a fabulous song, and it eventually became a A-side. I think they released that song I don't know how many times. Okay, now to their second studio album, their third album. This album came out, it's called Meat is Murder. This album came out on February 11th, 1985. So at this point, this is their third album in 11 months. That's something that people don't do. And this is a U.S. first pressing. It does not have... let's see, yeah, you can see it there. How Soon Is Now listed on side B. It's actually, the first song on side B is not listed on the album. And I don't believe the lyrics are on here either. No. This is the sleeve. It's got the lyrics. I guess the UK version of this album does not have How Soon Is Now. And that's quite unfortunate because it's a great song. This album, musically, it's a little more developed than the first album. It's a really good album. It's got classics like Meat is Murder. That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore. That song is fantastic. And it's a really good album. Now, their fourth album is another compilation. And it's basically singles, A-sides and B-sides that weren't on any of their albums. And there may be some BBC recordings at the end of side 2, I think. But this album is a pretty good starting point, I think, for someone that isn't really familiar with the Smiths. It's got a lot of their good singles. Panic, Ask, London, Big Mouth Strikes Again's on there, and There's a Light That Never Goes Out. That song is fantastic. And That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore. Rubber Ring. I mean, this album is really good. Asleep. One of the dreariest songs you'll ever hear, but beautiful song. And this is what the sleeve looks like. It's got the lyrics on both sides. Now their next album was their third studio album. The Smiths, The Queen Is Dead. Now, over the last couple of weeks, I've been listening to to the Smiths CDs in the car. That's what I've been listening to. And I started with the first album. I went through. And the two, this one and their next album are the two that I've listened to the most recently. So I'll probably have a little more detail what to say on these two albums because it's fresher in my old mind, you know. But anyways, this album, it starts out with The Queen is Dead, and gee, it's like anybody that thinks that the Smiths are some wimpy, jangly guitar band, check out The Queen is Dead. I'm sure it's on YouTube. Check out that song, man. It's got soaring guitars with feedback and wah-wahs, and it's just a great way. I mean, the drums, there's the tom-tom drums that are just driving this song, and great bass line. I mean, it is just a jamming song. And what a way to start their new album. It was way more adventurous than anything they had done musically. And the next song is Frankly Mr. Shankly. And that song, to me, it's like kind of a frivolous melody, and the lyrics, and it kind of reminds me of a McCartney song from Revolver. I mean, people always say, "Oh, Revolver is a great Psych album." To me, I mean, people say it's their best album, and I don't think so. There's just too many of those frivolous McCartney songs on it to call it a great Psych album in my mind. Anyways, this is the lyrics on one side of the gatefold and a picture on the other. But after Frankly Mr. Shankly, there's a song called I Know It's Over, and talk about a dark, bleak song. Gee. And then that's followed immediately, Never Had No One of My Own. And it's like another, oh, woe is me song in a row. So the problem I have with this album here, it starts out with one of the great driving guitars, just jamming song, and it's followed by three songs that, quite frankly, are just, I don't know. This is the sleeve. I don't know what it is. It looks like a guy skateboarding though, but I'm sure it isn't. Then the last song is Cemetery Gates. It's a good tune, but the lyrics again, I mean, there's the line that you have Yeats and Keats or whatever, but I have what's his name, Oscar Wilde. I mean, it just seems kind of awkward. Side 2 though is a great side through and through. Big Mouth Strikes Again, and then Cemetery Gates, Vicar in a Tutu, and then one of the greatest songs, not only Smith songs, but greatest songs, period, is There's a Light That Never Goes Out. That song, it starts out with this little guitar riff. Johnny Marr, he combined Hitchhike by the Stones and There She Goes. Is it There She Goes or There She Goes Again by Velvet Underground? And he kind of combined the intros to that song, those two songs, and that's the intro to There's a Light That Never Goes Out. But that is another song to check out on YouTube. It is fantastic. And then it ends with Some Girls Are Bigger Than Others. Musically, it's really an amazing guitar. And from what I understand is Johnny Marr was a little put off by Morrissey's lyrics to that song. I mean, they're really light. I mean, anybody that's heard the song knows it's a pretty tongue-in-cheek song. The way the Smiths used to do it, most of their songs, Johnny Marr would come up with the melody, the music, and then he would, I guess, give a tape to Morrissey, and then he would write the lyrics on top of that. Anyways, this is their fourth and final studio album, Strange Ways, Here We Come. Now, I didn't know at the time, but Strange Ways, I guess it's a prison or a mental hospital. I think it's a prison in Manchester. And this album is another probably their most fully realized musically, and even Morrissey's voice, man, it just sounds fantastic on this album. And side one side one is similar to the previous album, The Queen is Dead. The Queen is Dead side two is fantastic. On this album, it's side one. It's just fantastic. It starts out similar to the other album with what is it? A rush and a push, and the land roar is ours. Great song, and Girlfriend in a Coma. Side two is it starts out great, but then Unhappy Birthday, it's I didn't really care for that song. I think it's the weakest song on the album so far. I mean, every song on this album is great until you get to the second song on side two, Unhappy Birthday. Paint a Vulgar Picture, it's pretty good. I mean, but it's not that great. And then the last two songs, it turns out they were recorded as B-sides. So this album starts out really great, and it kind of finishes with a whimper, if you ask me. And this is the sleeve. Now, their seventh album and their third comp is this is another good starting place. And this is a U.S. Album, and it kind of combines songs from the other two comps that were UK releases. They were not. They did not have U.S. releases, and so it's basically taken a lot of the songs from their other two comps, and it does have four. It has all the lyrics inside. It does have 4 new songs. I think 3 of them are on side 1. Is It Really So Strange? Sheila, Take a Bow. Shoplifters of the World Unite, and Sweet and Tender Hooligan. They're all brand new recordings, and it's too bad that they didn't put those on side 2 of their last studio album, quite frankly. And then it's got one other brand new song, is Golden Lights, and it's a cover, and it's said that was the final straw that broke the Smiths up. Johnny Marr, he wanted to go into a more progressive, adventurous direction, and Morrissey kept going back to, older style, and that song is, it doesn't even sound like a Smith song. It's horrible. And that album, it came in these brown sleeves. Now the last album that they released, this came out in '88, I believe. It's a live album. It's called Rank. Really nice album cover. All their album covers are so cool. And this is the inside. Another gatefold. I would say this album I've probably played the least out of all their albums. This is the sleeve. Got a picture of Morrissey there. It's not a bad recording at all. But when I want to hear the Smiths live, I have a DVD of their Rockoplast concert, and I usually just put that in and I can watch and listen. So now I have a few bootlegs, and then I'm going to show I have a few 12 inches. This is another album, a live album. It's called The Smiths, Electric Stars, and it's on the Trademark of Quality. It's I recently went to it might be a YouTube channel actually, and they have bootleg live albums where you can listen to the albums on YouTube, and This one is one of the better ones. I mean, it's obviously a audience recording. It's kind of funny because there's somebody in the audience that's singing along on some of the songs, and they're going, "Woo!" You know how Morrissey does those weird, and the guy in the audience is doing it. It's kind of funny. But man, some of those Smiths bootlegs, I'm just warning you, they don't sound very good. And it came with this little catalog thing listing their other albums, and they had some pretty cool. That label had some pretty cool albums. The next bootleg is one I bought. It's the Smiths, the Old Guard BBC Tapes, Volume 2. I ran across this, I think in a store in Westwood, and I saw it and I go, man, you know what, I'm going to get this. Because all their BBC recordings that are on their 2 comps, or actually on even the US comp, they're really great recordings, and they're good versions of their songs. But this sounds like crap, man. And I think some of these are the same versions that are on the other album. It just sounds like, somebody played the record and the recorder was in the room next door. It's not very good. Now this one here, the Troy Tate recordings, this is a good bootleg. Now for those that don't know, the Smiths recorded, this is the first recordings of their first album, and I don't know if it was the Smiths weren't happy with it, the record company, or both. They scrapped the whole thing and they brought in a new producer, and then they re-recorded all the songs. And I think that's why their first album, it kind of sounds rushed to me. And but this is a really good. It's I mean, quite frankly, some of these versions are better than the ones that are on the official album. Some aren't as good, but it's a really good quality, this one. And it even says on here, this was transferred from a cassette tape, which was recorded off the original masters. And supposedly this version is a lot better than some of the other versions that are floating out there. But if I ever run across part 2, I'll pick that up. Now the last album is one that I bought online, and it's the Smiths. What is it? Rarities? Doesn't say anywhere. It's like Rarities and Instrumentals, I believe, is what it's called. Doesn't really say. It says, but I can't read this shit. This album is fantastic, man. And this is on. You can listen to this on YouTube, and it's got alternate versions of their songs throughout their career, and it's just, this is absolutely. I mean, the quality on this is darn near as good as their regular studio albums. And I will show the vinyl on this one because it is really nice, turquoise blue. And it's a double album. Now I do have a few of their 12-inch singles. I don't have a lot of their 12-inch singles. But the first one is one of my favorite songs by them, and I picked up this because it's That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore. And I picked it up because on side 2, or the B-side, it has 4 songs, live versions, and they're really good. Nowhere Fast, Stretch Out and Wait, Shakespeare's Sister, and Meat is Murder. And I figured, I didn't really buy a lot of their 12 inches because I thought it was kind of a rip-off. I mean, most of the songs, they ended up putting them on their albums anyways, They had so many comps. And this is a Panic. This has Vicar in a Tutu and the Dre's Train on side B. Another, I like that song. In fact, Panic is supposedly, they were listening to Steve Wright. He's a DJ that really, the Smiths and him kind of had a beef. In fact, the BBC, they did not play the Smiths during daytime radio. they kind of had a beef with him. I guess Morrissey rubbed him the wrong way, I believe, which wouldn't, if anybody that knows Morrissey, it's understandable. But I guess they listened to, there was this guy, Steve Wright. He announced the Chernobyl disaster, and 8,000 people died, and I think right after he said that 8,000 people died, and he goes, and now a new song by Wham, and they played this Wham song, and it was just the song is, the lyrics are so great. It starts out with this disaster, and then it ends up this hang the DJ, and it's just pretty cool the way he tied it all in. This is Sheila Take a Bow, one of their later songs that wasn't released on any of their official albums. They put it on that last comp that came out, and it's back with Is It Really So Strange and Sweet and Tender Hooligan. Very good. And then I got two more. I Started Something I Couldn't Finish. Another great. Their album covers are so cool. And then my last one, The Smiths, Ask Me. Another great song. And that's it. It's all my Smiths vinyl. I had watched some videos where people were showing their Smiths. I thought, you know what, that'll be the next band I show. And eventually I'll probably show this knucklehead, I don't have as many of his albums, but I do have. Now see, with him it's the reverse. I have more of his 12-inch records than I do the full albums. But anyways, everybody, take care.